In putting together this kitchen project, it was very important for me to have a team of people that I could work through on this. And I want to, in this video, talk about the features we included, the people who can use it, the thought process that we went through in order to come to this finished product. And in order to do that, I needed Compass Design in St. Louis, who does an excellent job with remodels and with new construction, home building. And they have a team of a builder and a contractor who happen to be married and get along and can create these great projects. And so as we go through this video today, we're going to show you all those features and talk about how we came to this process. My friend David, who's a great cook and also uses a wheelchair, is going to demonstrate how a lot of these features in this kitchen work for David and for anybody else who wants to cook in this kitchen. I lived with Max Starkloff, my husband, who used a wheelchair. He had a spinal cord injury, and I learned, even though I was a physical therapist by training, there was a lot I didn't know about how people with disabilities live after they leave a hospital or a rehabilitation setting. And so over the years of living with Max and working in the field of disability rights since the very early 70s, I began to learn that when we create accessible design, which is not bad, it's actually very good, we kind of isolate people with disabilities. Ron Mace, the creator of universal design, the concept of universal design, told me that one time when we were having dinner together in Washington in the 80s, and he said, if you think about it, Colleen, when we design things to be accessible, people who don't have a disability think, oh, well, that'll never happen to me, or I don't want that, or I don't need that, without realizing that someday you might need that, and you might be forced to live somewhere else, like a nursing home or somebody else's home, because you can't go back home to your home. So I began to think about what he said, and he also said, we need to be using design that includes people with disabilities in all aspects of our communities. And that made a lot of sense. So I learned from him that universal design is a way to design so that spaces can be easily adapted or modified with the least amount of cost or thought, which is what you'll see as we go through my kitchen here today. But I always wanted a universal kitchen. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I was really able to do that through the generosity of a very, very dear friend. Be able to take my ratty old kitchen, which was really dysfunctional, and my getting ratty old family room, and hire an architect and then find a great builder and designer to help me put this concept together. So what you're going to see here today is the finished product of my dream kitchen. And I had no way of knowing at the time that I started this project that I would actually need it, because my needs changed because of cancer. And so I was able to come back home and live in my own kitchen and function in my own kitchen and have friends like David, who you'll meet in the film shortly, come and cook with me and enjoy life together. In order to start this project, I had to first find someone to design it for me, because I'm a concept person. I understand the concept of universal design, but I can't draw it. I can't build it. And so it was easy to find an architect, because I've been doing universal design conferences since 2002 to try to educate builders, designers, architects, planners, code officials, disability advocates, and the general public on what universal design is, how beautiful it can be, and how functional it can be, and how adaptable it can be. I think I had bids from 3 different contractors. And when I would talk to them about universal design and the features, and I would look at the drawings and point things out, they'd say, oh yeah, we know about accessibility. And I thought, this is not my contractor. Because accessibility and universal design are compatible, but they're different. Accessibility shows the accessible features right off the bat when they're incorporated into a project. Universal design doesn't. And as we go through this day together, you'll see what I'm talking about. What was interesting was after I'd talked to those other contractors and felt great despair because I didn't want to have to fight with them or argue with them. I wanted somebody who really wanted to do universal design and understood it. I couldn't find anybody in town who understood it except Compass Design. I was referred to them by an acquaintance of mine who was working on universal design. And when I talked to Pete and he told me he had a wife who was an interior designer and she was interested too, and that was Jen, yeah. I thought, now I've hit the jackpot here. And when we first sat down and talked and went over the drawings, and they saw what an awful kitchen I had, what a mess it was, the way they talked and the enthusiasm they had for working with me to better understand universal design, I knew we had a team.
So in early 2017, one of the directors from the Gary Sinise Foundation called and said that they were going to be building a specially adapted custom smart home for a severely injured first responder here in St. Louis. And they asked if I would be interested in building this home for them. And of course, my jaw dropped and I thought, absolutely, you know, I'm very interested and would love to do this for you. That was our first entrance into the accessibility world. Mm-hmm. And that grew into two more homes with the Gary Sinise Foundation and a remodel. So we ended up building 3 custom specially adapted homes between 2017 and 2020 and remodeling 1. During that same time, Jen and I are married, you know, we work together, we have our personal life together, and in our personal life we're talking about how do we continue to plan for our future. So along the same time frame, we decided that we were going to take Compass and add another component to it, and that was going to be building or remodeling for our aging baby boomers. The market is growing drastically, quickly with baby boomers, and we thought, you know, we better start learning a little bit about aging in place.
Right.
So we went to Kansas City in early 2018, mm-hmm. and Jen and I both became CAP certified, mm-hmm. which is Certified Aging in Place Specialist. And that's a class that is put on through the National Association of Home Builders. So again, now we've learned a lot about accessibility, building with the Gary Sinise Foundation. We've learned a ton about aging in place. And during this time frame, this term kept coming up, universal design, and you would hear about it here and hear about it here. And what we finally realized is universal design was encapsulating everything that we were already doing, but it was making it beautiful. Mm-hmm. And that's where Jen just took off and really ran with universal design.
Because Jen's an interior designer.
She is, and she's a good one.
She's a good one.
Well, and really universal design is about, you know, inclusive. You're including everyone that may visit the space into your home. And it's important that obviously in interior design, you want everything to be aesthetically pleasing, and but it also can be very functional for people of different abilities. And I think that's really important to us to incorporate all of that in anything that we design. And so when we were introduced to Colleen in her kitchen, it was just a very exciting project to be involved in.
And it was quite a path. So we didn't jump right into universal design. It kind of started with this accessibility with the Gary Sinise Foundation, led into aging in place. And then we started getting interested in universal design and were introduced to an occupational therapist, her name is Tiffany Dill, who started the Inclusive Design Alliance. And that is an alliance that she started to promote and educate, starting with St. Louis, our St. Louis market, about universal design. Mm-hmm. And that was the introduction to Colleen was actually through Tiffany and the Inclusive Design Alliance. Jen and I have since become board members of that Design Alliance to, again, help promote and educate universal design throughout St. Louis.
So I think, when we were first introduced to you, you started out with a really great plan. I mean, you had a great architect, and the plan was really, really good. So, we wanted to make sure that when we got into the plan, that first of all, it reflected your style. And then, we wanted to maybe tweak a few things because this particular kitchen was designed for someone in a motorized chair. So you'll see in the, when we get into the kitchen aspects that there are certain features that you wouldn't notice when you walk into the kitchen that are more inclusive for anyone that would want to use it, but you wouldn't really know. So it was really just about any other project that I would have with a client. We'll sit down and we'll talk about what your likes are, and we just talked about her house and to make sure that it would flow with the rest of her house, what her aesthetic is, and we just kind of went from there.
What was great about working with you guys was that Pete knew how to do it. I knew he did because I saw videos of what you guys have done in the Gary Sinise home. So I knew that you did quality work.
Yeah.
And I knew you understood accessibility, but we had a lot of discussions as we went along about where are we going to find this and where are we going to find that.
Right.
So, for example, I said to you, I need a shallow bowl sink. And I have 2 sinks in this kitchen.
Right.
And you're like, okay, but you found them. You found them with Kohler.
Yeah.
Which was great. And I said, the drain has to be offset to a corner. Yeah. Which you don't commonly find in hardware stores or even kitchen and bath places. It's not common.
Right.
You had to go looking.
Yeah. So the sink configuration over here was a bit of a challenge because it's a shallow bowl. It's a shallow undermount Kohler bowl. And the drain is offset, which is nice so that you have that ease in going under.
You can pull under with, you can pull fully under so you can use the sink if you're seated in a wheelchair, or even let's say you break your leg and standing and walking around the kitchen is difficult. So you sit on a chair to do these things.
Right. But then the other aspect of it was the disposal. So the disposal is going to be directly underneath your sink. So what we decided to do, and it was, you and I kind of going back and forth of how to make this work, was do a second sink right next to the primary sink that was a little bit deeper with the disposal underneath it, and then we encapsulated that in a cabinet. So I think that really worked well. And then we were also able to put the faucet on the side for ease of accessibility.
Yeah, we ended up putting the faucet so it would swing to each sink.
Right.
We put the water mixing valve closer to the front of the cabinet so that a seated person or a standing person or a little kid could reach it and turn it on. And it's a lever handle, which is easy to find now. It wasn't when we first started pushing universal design, but it is.
Right.
And the other thing we talked about is where are we going to put the control for the garbage disposal? Because a lot of people put them on a back wall, on the backsplash.
Yep.
But if you're sitting down, you can't reach it. So the little button that's right near the edge of the countertop that you just push down and operate the disposal works.
Right, right.
I'll tell you, Colleen, one of the biggest learning experiences from your project was learning about that side-mounted faucet. So we now use that all the time. So, and it doesn't matter, it's in kitchens, in master baths. At the last Gary Sinise home, we had a separate roll-under sink for the owner, and we mounted his kitchen faucet on the side, just like we did with yours. In his, we also made it motion activated, so he could just reach close and it would turn the sink on. But now we're even doing that in master baths. So we'll have double sinks in a master bath, And we, instead of putting the faucets behind the sinks where you have to reach all the way back, they're mounted on the side and they look beautiful. I mean, you would never even know
Right.
that that is a function of accessibility because it's truly a universal design feature.
Another thing that was an interesting experience that we had was in dealing with how you pull underneath the cabinets. And fortunately, we had them custom made so we could do them well. But
Right.
what I wanted was doors that come off, cabinet fronts, base cabinet fronts that
Right.
come off easily. And these little clips, these bloom clips, come off, unclip. I can do it myself easily and stick the doors in a closet. And the floor is not on the floor. It's a floor, and it's also not screwed in, although it was screwed in at first.
Right.
And we had to go back and unscrew it when I couldn't pull it out. But it slides right out. So I have that feature underneath my kitchen sink, my island sink, and also underneath the cooktop, because if you're really going to cook in your kitchen, those are all the places where you have to be able to pull under so you can prepare your meal. And we thought about having workspace where you could do your food prep. So I can do food prep at my island. David, who can do food prep at the island, and he can pull underneath and he can use the sink, but he can also pull underneath the cooktop. And if I want to stick him with doing the dishes, he can rinse them. And then because of the raised dishwasher, he can easily put them in. Although I will say this, if you're seated in your kitchen, the standard install works fine. It's the convenience of a raised dishwasher is for people like me, whose horse threw me a couple of times. So my back, a lot of bending is not preferable for me. So I just love standing up, rinsing my dishes, and putting them in a raised dishwasher. But I also put them in the standard installed dishwasher at the island when I entertain and I need to run a lot of dishes. One of the things that's really important to think about if you're going to redesign your kitchen, do a renovation, or if you're going to build a new kitchen, is to think about the placement of things that you need every day, like receptacles. So for example, it's very common now in the commercial marketplace, but it's going to become common in the residential, to have pop-up electrical sockets that you can embed in your counter wherever you want them. I wanted them close to the edge of the counter so that people could reach them. And so, Pete, we had an interesting discussion about finding those because you brought these silver tone, which look great in my countertop, pop-ups that have 2 electrical sockets in them. And there's another type that are black that you said you like these better.
So the interesting and sometimes difficult part about the pop-up receptacles is they have to go somewhere. So these pop-up receptacles go down into your cabinet a certain distance. And what's allowed in St. Louis County is one specific type, St. Louis County Building Department. You're in St. Louis City, so we had a little bit more leeway, and we actually found a different type of pop-up receptacle that that was shallow. It only went down about 1.5 inches or 2 inches down into the cabinet, so it didn't affect your drawer space below. So you could still have a drawer below those pop-ups. So that was a neat little feature that we were able to seek out and find for your project.
Another thing we talked about that was really interesting was the pot filler. We were talking about, a lot of people are putting pot fillers in their homes and they locate them on the backsplash wall behind the cooktop. But I said to you guys, I want one that's side mounted and closer to the front. And that was fun, Jen. You had to go find that.
So there were, and it was a little bit of a challenge because the countertop is so thick and it needed this particular countertop mounted pot filler just needed a certain thickness, so we had to drill it in. So there were a lot of little components that needed to happen, but we made it work, and I think it looks great. And a few other universal design features. You're going to want wider areas between your cabinets, so you have room to move. The raised dishwasher is nice. Also, drawer dishwashers are also nice. Reachability is very important, where you store certain things and being able to reach your appliance locations, your appliance heights are something to consider. So there's quite a bit of information that goes into a universally designed kitchen. It's not difficult at all. It's not more expensive. It's just something that you need to consider when you're designing a kitchen. And I really think universal kitchens are going to be the kitchen of the future. I think that everyone's going to end up using these universal design aspects in every kitchen.
If we have anything to do with it, they will.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's important. I think inclusion is important. And it's also just a more functional way of doing things.
You know, on that point you were just making about thinking it through and planning it, that's very key with universal design. So for example, the wall-mounted oven, which is actually in a custom-made cabinet, I have staff who use wheelchairs in my office. So I measured the height from the floor to above their knees, and came up with 30 inches was a good number, so that when you pull down the oven door, you can pull fully underneath it in order to pull out the oven rack in my oven that's mounted higher. I also have another oven because I like to entertain a lot, and Christmas and Thanksgiving and big parties, you need a couple ovens to go with. But instead of mounting them one on top of the other, one of them would be out of the reach range. So we put in another one that's underneath a countertop. And then the countertop also has a flexible workspace, so it can go up and down. And you're the ones that found that in the commercial industry. And you put this walnut top that you put on it is phenomenal. It looks really great, but it functions. The first time I really used the flexible function of it was for Easter, because you guys got the kitchen finished right before Easter, and I had the whole family over, and my little grandson, who was 5 years old, wanted to pour the waffle batter into the waffle iron. Well, if we kept it at a 36-inch counter height, he would have had to climb up on a chair. But I was able to lower the countertop so he could just reach in and pour that waffle batter, and the grin on his face was so fabulous. But the second time I used it was when David came over to cook with me, and David raised it. He put it at a height that was convenient for him.
That's wonderful.
So what was really fascinating to me was when we started talking about color contrast, because the architect said, make the cabinets black. And I was thinking, black? Seriously, black? But I know, why would you hire an architect and not do what he says? So we went with that. And then you came along with this great idea for the backsplash, or what do you call them?
The quartz countertops?
Yes.
And using the quartz. So quartz is antimicrobial, which is really great. And then, we used a lighter quartz countertop to contrast the black cabinets. And I think aesthetically it looks really great. But it's also really functional for anyone whose, visibility is a little bit impaired, and then there's a medium stain on the hardwood floor, which also contrasts the black cabinets. So it all just really looks great, but it also really works well for anyone who might be, visibly impaired.
And you guys were talking about aging in place. Many of us begin to lose our vision as we get older, and color can define where things are for you. Color contrast is a universal feature. And so we had lots of discussions about what color is this going to be and how does it contrast with what's next to it.
And the black actually looks fantastic in your home.
It's amazing. When it was all finished and it was all installed, I went, oh my God, I'm so glad I listened to the architect. It is gorgeous. My son, who grew up in this house, had not seen it. I wouldn't let the kids in here. I wanted him to see the finished product, not the stage by stage. When my son came over here and walked from the front door through the kitchen door into the kitchen, he stopped. He was one step into the kitchen. He stopped. He stared around at the whole kitchen. Tears.
Oh.
He said, oh my God, Mom, it's beautiful. And then he said the sweetest thing. He said, "You deserve this."
And you do.
But
Yes,
Yes.
you do.
Yes.
to get a reaction like that from a young
Yeah.
man
Yeah.
who grew up in this house, it was
That's fantastic.
it was
awesome.
great.
That's good.
So
That's great to hear.
it being beautiful is
Yep.
Well, good.
a big
Good.
part of it. And another great opportunity for design, and why it was so great to have you as a team, was that I was going to install the refrigerators together because they come with a kit so they can be together. But I was frustrated by the fact that you need some place to put things down when you take them out of your refrigerator. And I would have had to say, if I was in a wheelchair, I'd have to take them out and go put them on the island or on the buffet. And then you said, why don't we separate them?
Well, I think it was collaborative. I think we were both kind of trying to come up with a solution. And I think you're right. I think I may have said something, but it was definitely a collaborative. And I think this is one of my favorite features because it is so functional. You can, for me, just standing, I can pull something out. I can place it here on the counter. But if I were in a chair, I could easily do the same thing. And then I have a place to put everything, even if I want to prepare it right here. So I think it works great and it looks fantastic. So I just think it's great for anyone who's interested in doing a full-size freezer and a full-size refrigerator to have that little area in between rather than put them together.
And what was the bonus is I was trying to figure out where to put a wine rack. People usually put wine racks up high because you're standing and you can reach them.
Yes.
But my friends using wheelchairs like David, with the wine rack down below and the drawers in between,
Yeah.
it gives me a white wine rack and a red wine rack
Yes.
on either side, but they're so reachable for everybody.
Right. And wine
then I've got-
accessibility universal wine
Universal wine.
accessibility
Universal wine, right.
is a nice feature in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gave me a coffee center too,
Right.
which was really, really fabulous. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing is it's easy enough because we included the beverage center at the buffet. So when I'm entertaining or when I want to just throw some wine in there to chill it, it works out so well.
Yeah.
And it's also under counter. So it's easy for somebody standing or seated to put whatever they want in that beverage center.
Yeah.
So it really turned out
good.
fabulous.
So I'm so happy about it.
Yeah, me too.
We had a couple of challenges during the design stage, I'd say, and I think the biggest design challenge was the roll under sink and how you ended up designing the large, shallow undermounted main sink area and then putting the disposal actually in the cabinet next to it. So you really have that full access of underneath that sink to
Yeah,
get on
I
without
would
being
say that was probably the biggest challenge. I think, this is an older home. So, when we kind of got rid of the old kitchen, the ceilings aren't necessarily flush, so there were like little aspects of design,
Design and
the
construction.
build. But other than that, just really, all of us working together to come up with solutions. But I think it was pretty effortless. Well, there was some work that went into it, obviously, but I think we made a good team, and I think a great result happened.
I remember that I had a hard time picking the color of the floor. I didn't want it dark because we had black cabinets coming down to it, and I didn't want it really, really blonde either.
Right.
And I love that you said to the floor guy, let's mix. You mixed the colors.
We did. We
And
did
we
a
put 'em on
custom
there.
mix, right?
And then he sanded them out when I was able to say, boy, I really like this one.
Yeah. And that's what's nice with the job finished floor is you can really kind of customize your stain. And then we put a color on the wall. We did a color to kind of contrast the honey floor, and I think it worked out really well.
One challenge we had was universal versus standard install. So when I came in and tried to take the kitchen cabinet, take the base cabinet doors off and pull out the floor, I found out that the cabinet installer had screwed the floor in to the bottom of the cabinet. And I said,
Which was the
"How am I-"
opposite of what we wanted to do.
And I said, how am I going to get those out? And
Right.
he said, oh, you just get underneath there with a screwdriver. And I thought, no, that's not good. No. So I said, can't you screw some supports in there so it can just slide out? Just lay them on the top of 2 pieces of wood. And that's actually what he ended up doing. And it's so simple now.
Yeah.
It works so easily for me, or for, like, if I was in a wheelchair, I could easily have one of my grandkids or a neighbor or anybody come in and undo the clips and take the floor out, stick them in a closet, and I've got access.
Right.
Or my friends do.
One thing we
right.
didn't talk about on the cabinets is we actually did a raised toe kick.
Oh,
So
that's
the
right.
toe kick under the cabinets are 10 inches tall, so that someone in a chair, their feet is elevated a little bit, they don't bump into the actual base cabinet.
Good point, Pete. A lot of people don't think of that, and standard built or the
4.
cabinets you find
Yeah.
are much lower, and people in wheelchairs end up scraping their bottom cabinets or having to sit side saddle because they can't kind of turn in a little bit to get their feet a little closer and get their arms a little closer. But in our case, we've got pull unders too. But yes, that was a good feature.
And these were custom, but there are a lot of national brands now that are kind of getting on board where you have that flexibility to do a taller toe kick. I don't know that a 10-inch toe kick they're doing, but they could do probably up to 6 to 8 inches. So some of the national brands are catching on.
I think the more we show these models and show that not only are they really functional, they're really beautiful. Most people, there's nobody who comes into my kitchen and says, hey, what are you doing with such high toe kicks
Nobody's
in there?
gonna even
You don't
notice.
Nobody notices.
You really
they're,
don't.
They're too busy saying, oh my God, this is a gorgeous kitchen. And they want to cook with me.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, let's do
let's
this.
do it.
And they also want to see what are all the little gadgets and things. Another thing that was really great, and I saw this at Tiffany Dill's house, was the Kitchenaid Mixer being on a mechanism that you can lift up and lift down. And so that brings the mixer up to the countertop height. And as I told you guys when we were doing the planning for this, in my view, with all the years I've been working in the field of disability rights, and I've watched how appliances are changing, wheelchairs are changing, everything's changing because people are starting to say, what's the demand? Having a wheelchair that you can press a little button and it goes up or down enables someone in this kitchen to reach to the first shelf of my high wall cabinets, but also get underneath the cabinets to a height that's workable for them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the nice things about the Kitchenaid Mixer. It comes up to countertop height, but David can just push a button on his chair and up he comes. And he loves to cook. So he can have access to workspace to plug in the mixer because the receptacle's right there. And he can, do things with the sink. He could bake something.
That's great.
With our mixer.
And that's Rev-A-Shelf. So Rev-A-Shelf has quite a bit of components that you can buy for cabinets that's that mechanism that takes that Kitchenaid mixer up. And they also have some other components for upper cabinets if you need to, open a cabinet, pull everything down, reach it. So that's a really good product line for Universal Design as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, years ago when I first started talking about universal design to architects, the architects would say, well, we build whatever the client wants. Or we design whatever the client wants. And builders would say, we build what the client wants. And I would say, well, but they don't know what universal design is.
Yeah.
And you can show them that it's beautiful and it's functional and it lets them remain in their homes if something changes. But we need good models. And that's why I'm so excited that I found you guys and we could work together so compatibly and really talk through how do we do this, how do we do that. Like, for example, I said, I need appliances that I can reach. And we talked about that exhaust hood.
Yes.
And either one of you two guys said, or the supplier said, we've got remote controls for those. And I'm like, that's great. Because prior to that remote control possibility, builders and contractors and designers were putting electrical sockets like under cabinets, or you'd have to open a cabinet door to get to a switch. But now we can embed switches in the countertop, and we can have remote controls that turn on your oven,
Yes.
that control the under cabinet lighting on the backsplash and
Right.
gives you mood lights,
Right.
or warm lights,
And task lighting.
and task lighting, and then the exhaust fan is a real big deal because it's up high above your cooktop, and
Yeah.
so being able
The
to push
remote
that button
Button is
and handle
a
that.
wonderful feature.
So the and you can also control these little things from your cell phone,
That's right.
which is
Voice activation is starting to get a little more, there's certain things with Alexa that is starting to happen now. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in the voice activation side of, which will help, universally anyone in the kitchen, turn on the oven, turn on the faucet. And you could even, there's a lot to really learn about voice activation that we're not quite,
Well, we've done
a little
so
bit.
with 3 homes that we've built now. We have used voice activation. In one of the homes, the homeowner can actually we have door closers on 2 of the doors. He can actually say, Alexa, open front door, and that front door will just automatically open. Now, home automation of the past was very expensive. You could home automate an entire home, but it might be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to turn on lights and video cameras and change the channel and audio and security. But now these manufacturers are coming up with these new products that make it so much less expensive, much more available to the common user and the homeowner, and a lot of it has become DIY now also.
yeah.
So we're starting to see a lot more in the home automation world, including even just automating blinds up and down. It's a
Right.
lot less expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
They're calling these smart homes. I wish they'd call them universal homes.
Exactly.
Because that's
Yeah.
the language that we're really trying to get out there. But
Yeah.
yes, you're absolutely correct. I think if I had it to do over again, I might want to sit down with you guys and say, I'd like to have a little more under-counter storage. Although I did create it in this house because I had a closet that I wasn't using, and it has flexible shelving, adjustable shelving. That's a universal feature. So
Yes.
I can put things in that closet, but I think for most people who may not have as much room as I have,
Right.
trying to get as much under cabinet storage as you can is a great idea. I did want, though, those pull-out trash cans for the garbage and the recycle. I love that. I've never had that. I've had this house since 1977, and not until last year did I have the
That's
convenience of not having an ugly trash can sitting out in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't trade.
Yeah.
But I think if you're thinking about the possibility that you could be seated, having things within the reach range. But what you said about Rev-A-Shelf, with pulling down the shelves, they used to be really hard to push them back up.
Yeah.
If they're easy to push back up,
Right.
then you can reach heavy stuff if you mount the wall cabinets low enough that a seated person can reach
That's true.
that handle and pull them down.
Yeah.
And get what they want off that shelf and push it back.
And drawers are a great way to store plates.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just wonderful for anyone to just pull out your drawer, pull out the drawers, your plates are right there as opposed to just a wall cabinet. So I think drawers work really well in anyone's kitchen, or
And base cabinets with just the pull-out shelves inside the base cabinets.
Those are fabulous, and those have been coming around for many, many years, and I think they were mostly in high-end kitchens, but they're becoming more commonplace. We put those in 6 North when
Sure.
we did that.
yeah.
Front-mounted controls, touch controls, washers and dryers that are front-loading that can be raised on a platform so that if you're standing, you can reach them, but if you're seated, you can also reach them because a lot of times, like if you have a washer and a dryer that you have to reach, well, dryers you reach inside. But a washer, if you have to reach over the top and try to pull stuff out and you're seated, it's very difficult to do unless you stand up. But the front mounted products, the industry is hearing us.
Right.
And they're coming along with the designs we need.
You know, and I think one other thing that I probably would have done differently is, you know, on your adjustable butcher block countertop, you know, it's very hard to see on the legs because the legs are black and the cabinets on either side are black. But I think I probably would have encased the legs in some wood just to kind of make them disappear, because that mechanism just goes up and down. So that would be one thing aesthetically that I would do differently. But I think other than that, and if we would have gotten maybe a few more drawers in here, other than that, I mean, I'm really happy with the result, and I think you are.
So I am.
We won Custom Remodel of the Year for Aging in Place was the category. And here's our award. So unfortunately, the Home Builders Association does not have a category for universal design.
Yet.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So over the last few years, we've won several awards for Aging in Place and Most Advanced Custom Home of the Year. And I'm entering these categories because it's the only categories I can get them into. The one commonality between all of these homes and projects is universal design. Every single one of them that won an award was a universally designed project. So HBA, we're coming after you.
I think it's really important to understand, and I'm going to reiterate this point, that without people like you, builders and designers, who recognize that this is a really great way to design, we're not going to advance universal design. I had a discussion with Ron Mace in the 80s, in that dinner that Max and I had with him. And I said, Ron, if universal design is such a great idea, why don't we put it in the codes and make people do it? And he goes, think about it, Colleen. We did that with accessible design. And what do most designers and architects do? They go to a book and they say, this is an accessible bathroom. They take that little design and they stick it in their drawings and they move on. They don't think about how it's going to function. Don't think about all the different end users of it. And designers and builders get into this because they're creative. And they want to be creative. And Ron was an architect. And he said, we need to have principles by which to design and then let our creative juices flow. And I think he was right. And that's why universal design is growing. And manufacturers can get on board because they're also meeting the challenge. You know, having space, having countertops that go up and down at the push of a button.
Right.
And you can preset them. And having electrical sockets that you can embed. That started in the commercial industry for conferences where people would plug their computers into movable tables that they plug into a central socket because everybody brings their laptop. It's meeting a demand. And I think we are creating a demand for universal design. And we're letting, like Moen, it's got their little touch thing. Great, you can do touch lamps. Those have been around forever. There's so many opportunities for creative people to be creative. And all I do is say, can you give it to us? It's a good idea, but you guys have to do it.
Well, you've done a tremendous amount of work, and you've really dedicated your life to this cause, and we're just really happy to be a part of it. You know,
well, you're going to take it. You're going to take it into the future. We need you to take it into the future.
We're excited about it.
So am I. I can't tell you how happy I am that not only did I find you, but when you came in, you said, we really want to learn about this. We really want to work together. We want to do universal design. And because we were able to work together, we have this, and we can show it to people. I want you to bring builders and contractors through here, people that you know. I want you to bring customers through here. I want you to have a key to my house in your pocket and the alarm code because, and then I have to keep it clean all the time. But it is refreshing to work with a builder and a designer and an architect who understand what the customer is trying to get to and can bring something like this to life. And that's what you did for me. And for that, I am so grateful, and I thank you.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and we are grateful for you because you've been a great inspiration and mentor and teacher for us. I mean, we've learned an enormous amount of material about universal design.
Well, when they say it takes a village to do anything, they're not
and
kidding.
you're just a pleasure to be around, and you're just a pleasure to work with.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for what you did, because it's so, I love the reaction of my son coming in here, couldn't even walk into the kitchen without tears.
Oh.
It was great. But everybody who comes in here just says, oh my God, many of whom have been in my house at parties before, and I had to not be embarrassed and just prepare a party in that ratty old kitchen for years.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to do that anymore.
Well, I'm glad. I'm
Me
really
too.
happy about
Happy
that.
to be a part.
Me too.
Yeah.
So my friend David, who I've known for years and is an attorney, contracted polio when he was very little. But David's a great example of somebody who can really put all these features here to good use, because he can pull underneath the cooktop, he can pull underneath the sink, he can do food prep, he can use the mixer. He can plug things in at the countertop. He doesn't have to try to reach to a backsplash to plug things in. So this kitchen was really designed for people who use equipment like David.
Yeah.
But my experience tells me that that's the wheelchair of the future, because it makes sense. As much as I advocate for lots of changes, people don't want lowered countertops in their house because they can't sell that house. Universal design lets us create houses that can be sold and resold,
Right.
and they can be adapted. And then, if I put the doors and the floors back in my pull-under spaces, a buyer could come in here and have no clue
Right.
that this is a highly adaptable kitchen.
Right.
So I think that we've hit on something that really addresses a demand that's growing, because we're an aging population, and it's growing because we never have a lack of people with disabilities who need this housing, but there's not enough of it in the community.
Right.
Colleen, it was such an honor for you to have selected Compass Design Build and our team to do your kitchen. I mean, you are the absolute leader for sure in St. Louis, if not the country, and maybe even the world in universal design. So it was a very humbling experience to work with you and to learn from you. So much so that we now use universal design ideas, design, and features in all of our projects. So every custom home that we build, every remodel that we design and build, we use those features, and the homeowners sometimes don't even know it until we explain it to them. But if anybody is looking for a universally designed home, new custom home or remodel, we would love to build for you Compass Design Build.
Let's promote it. Let's get people to kind of kick the tires,
Yeah.
but they better not kick my toe kicks.
No.
Right.
But to come and to see what it is for themselves. That's the way to really promote it and get more people
Exactly.
to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. It's been our
It's been a
pleasure.
pleasure.